Bauman. I am an agent at Aevitas Creative Management, working on both children's and adult projects. I kind of say that I do everything from middle grade and up. So on the kid side, I am pretty genre agnostic. I love everything. I love science fiction and fantasy. I love horror. I love mystery. I love historical fiction. I also do some nonfiction projects solely on the children's side. So on the nonfiction side, I do a little bit of everything. I do some memoir, but really I love projects that introduce young readers to a new aspect of the world, whether it's a biography of a historical figure that might have been overlooked by history, or an aspect of the natural world or the sciences that uh, is really fun and approachable and not too technical. Again, we're catering to young readers, so we want it to be fun for them and not extra homework. On the adult side, I'm a little bit more narrow in the genres that I work on. I always refer to my projects as genre light, essentially. What you might give to someone who is maybe dipping their toe in a specific genre for the first time. So I do, again, science fiction, fantasy, horror, but more on the lighter side. So usually more contemporary, grounded, realistic settings with that speculative element to it, and less so, that high second world fantasy, that epic space intergalactic space opera. I also do rom-coms, and I do a little bit of mystery or historical, but again, very light on the genre aspect, very grounded in reality. And my taste there overall is very much, I love high concept projects, but with just a really beautiful lyrical execution to them. So when I say grounded genre fiction, um, I really mean that it's not asking the reader to retain too much detailed world building. They have uh, a baseline starting point in realism and in the world that they are already familiar with. And it is just adding some sort of aspect to it that heightens that reality a bit more. Um, so, for example, with horror, usually the horror aspect is introducing some element of the fantastical that is grounded in realism. So if we're talking about movies like The Babadook or It Follows are really great examples. Same with Us. Same with now I'm trying to remember horror movies. I mean, Final Destination is a classic example that it's, very grounded in our world, but adding a little bit of a speculative element that is the horror aspect. I It's funny. If you ask anyone, they would describe me as a scaredy cat. I am very easily frightened normally. Um, but I think that's a little bit of what I enjoy about horror. It's kind of the aspect of, if this was real life, I would be a mess. I would I would surrender immediately. Like, I'm not getting far if I was put in a horror movie situation. Um, but that aspect of, kind of horrified, kind of distressed by something, but still continuing to watch, that that sounds really weird, but that kind of razor line of, this is something that I hope never happens to anyone. It is absolutely the worst case scenario, but I have to admit I am a little entertained. It's it's a way of confronting your fears. It's kind of like immersion therapy in a sense. It's something that you never want to experience, you never want to see happen to you or to anyone around you ever. um and I guess a way to confront that nightmare is to put yourself in front of it and to view it, from a safe distance through a fictitious lens. Um, but still, confronting that to, I guess, become a stronger person in a deep sense. I do really like horror romance. I think that's a really intriguing new micro trend that we're seeing. I really like horror meets fantasy or science fiction, that sort of blending. I feel like there should be more horror historical because I mean the fascination that we as a society have with Jack the Ripper, I feel like that that leads itself to a lot of exciting new storytelling possibilities. Growing up in this world, sadly, and I was literally having this conversation with a relative yesterday who's like, stay safe. I'm like, I am a woman living in modern times. I trust no one. I'm always vigilant because that's the reality of it. So, having stories of girls defeating serial killers or malicious forces, that is an empowering escape from reality.
If you could wave a magic wand and have any project in your inbox in 2025, what would it be?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, I so in college I was an English major. So many of us in this industry are. And I read a lot of classics as, part of my studies, but also for fun because I was that kind of nerdy kid as well. And I love when a writer is able to take a classic familiar story and do a really fun twist on it. So that may be, taking Greek mythology and putting it in a sci-fi setting, or, we see it a lot, I think, recently with modernized rom-com retellings of classic romances like Pride and Prejudice, like Jane Eyre. Um, I do love that, but I also love to see an unexpected genre mashup. Um, taking, for example, Jane Eyre and putting it in a 1920s murder mystery. That could be really fun. Um, my one kind of caveat, though, with retellings is that it has to stand on its own. It's always nice to sprinkle in those little Easter eggs for the longtime readers and fans, but you shouldn't have the expectation that every reader who picks up your book will have read the original version. Um, because more often than not, they haven't. And this is maybe their first encounter with, Mr. Darcy. So your concept, if it is a retelling, you don't have to be too precious about it and too faithful to the original. It really should have its own legs.
What's your favorite thing about being an agent?
Ooh, I love working with writers. That's what's always drawn me to agenting, having that long-term relationship. And, while I find the editorial aspects of that really fulfilling, reading manuscripts, if a writer is having a problem or, you know, they're trying to achieve something but aren't quite getting there, rolling up your sleeves and digging into a manuscript and troubleshooting that, while that's all fun, I also do enjoy the business aspect of it, strategizing a career and what that means long term, and what that means in terms of future projects and when to schedule them out. Um, Going back and forth with a publisher, I really do enjoy the negotiation and contract process because it uses a different part of my brain from the creative side. So it's almost like giving my creative side of my brain a little bit of a vacation to rest and recharge before I dig back into that manuscript by shifting gears and talking numbers and, you know, contract terminology with publishers. So, uh, really, I think the answer is all of it. Ooh, my number one tip for writers is to know as much as you can about your career. You know, it's your name on the books. It's your future. Don't be afraid to ask questions, even if they seem silly or stupid. That is what we as industry professionals are here for, to help answer those questions. Um, you know, you want to understand all of the aspects of what's going on. You want to understand what exactly is in your contract. So be informed, do your research, but also don't be afraid to ask questions.